What's up, it's Jen Brown. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a couple of projects that you can crochet using granny squares. I'll show you how to do the most kind of basic form of a granny square if you've never made one before, and walk you through a couple of projects. These are also really great to do with scrap yarn. I know if you've been to this channel before, a lot of you are a fan of my scrap yarn crochet projects. Anything you make with granny squares is great for that because you can make them any size you want, so they're perfect for just about any project. So let's go ahead and get into them. Okay, so if you have already learned how to make a granny square, we're doing the most basic one, so you can go ahead and skip to, I'll put a timestamp to where we start working on the actual project. But if you've never made a granny square before, here's how to do it. They're super easy and you can make them whatever size you want. Start with our loop. You're going to chain 4. Join this chain into the first chain with a slip stitch. And now you've got this little ring. Now we're going to chain 5. And double crochet into the hole at the center of the little loop we made, and we're only going to be using slip stitches and double crochets for this. Now this little loop we just made with that chain 5 is going to act as our first corner. So I'm going to double crochet 2 more times. Still working into this center loop, and if the tail gets in your way, you can trim that off, but once you get the hang of it, you can kind of just ignore it. Then I'm going to chain 2. This is going to make our second corner. 3 more double crochets. Whoops. Chain 2 more for our third corner. 3 more double crochets. Chain 2 for our last corner. Now because we chained 5 here, 2 of those chains are going to be our corner, and then this chain 3 is going to act as one of the double crochets. So I'm only going to do 2 more double crochets into the center loop. If it gets a little tight towards the end here, that's okay because you can kind of spread things out. So now I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 chains and join with a slip stitch, and this is the start of our square. So now I'm going to chain 3 so we can start our next row. I'm going to go ahead because there's no other loop except for this hole. I'm going to do 2 double crochets into this corner, chain 2 to make a new corner, then do 2 more, now I'm going to do a double crochet underneath these chains. And honestly, I think this could work if you are a front loop crocheter, but if you usually go underneath the whole chain, that's kind of how the granny squares are done, but it's really your preference, just as long as you're consistent. Now that we reached the corner, I'm going to once again do 2 double crochets into the corner, chain 2, 2 more into the corner. So every time you reach a corner, you're going to do that 2 double crochets chain 2, 2 double crochets. So you're adding a total of 4 double crochets to each row. So you should always have an odd number because we started with 3. So the second row should have 7, third row 11, 15, 19, like, and so on. So each time you should be adding 4. And we're gonna do 1 into each double crochet from the row below. Do our 2 double crochets in the corner, chain 2, 2 more. I'll go ahead and finish out this row for you so you can see. Around this last corner. Then when you reach where you started, that chain 3 that you start each row with is always going to count as 1. So we already have 3 here, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that means we're finished with this row, and I can go ahead and slip stitch to join it and chain 3 to start a new one. So this is the process for each row you want to do, and these can be as big or as small as you like, and you just, from your chain 3, you finish out the row, do all your corners, do that 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets into each corner, and bring it back around, and you just keep continuing that this way. If it doesn't look square, if it starts to look too round, that probably means you're adding too many. So just keep in mind you want to have an odd number of stitches each row, and it should always be 4 more than the one before. So for this first project, we are going to make a quilt. So I've got, raise us up here, some big granny squares. These are 8 rows, so this little guy becomes a big one like this, and I've made 30 of these that we're going to put together into what looks like a quilt. I used some scrap yarn that I had a lot of, so I was able to make these solid colors, but if you wanted to truly make this a scrap yarn project, which I actually wasn't sure if I was going to do that at first, I have some, oh, move my water cup, happy Halloween. I have some different squares that I actually made, like just using scrap, so that's really up to you, like what you want to do for your quilt, or if you want to have like a stripe like this, you can do that, but for mine, I'm just going to stick with solid colors. Okay, now I've got my beautiful little stack here of 30 squares. I've got to just figure out the pattern and then we'll put them together. Okay, so I've got my squares laid out. Now there's a couple of ways that you could join these. You could just take a big yarn needle and basically like sew these together or like whip stitch it, but I have a ton of this blue color left, and I actually kind of like the look if you take a contrasting color and like slip stitch these together to make like a rib effect, or even a single crochet will kind of make that even a higher ridge. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. So I'm just going to take my loop, and if I have some left, I might do a border around the outside too, just to square these off really nice. And I'm just gonna slip stitch these together. I'll do like half of this slip stitch and then half single crochet so you can see the difference, and so I can make a decision about what I would rather do. Okay, so this with the slip stitch makes what I call the sandwich effect, where you can see the slip stitch kind of going around the two other colors, which can look really cool. So if I like that, we'll just do that, but let's see. You can also do the single crochet, which kind of closes that off so you can't see the seam. So I think this is actually what I'm going to do to just get a little bit more of like a nice kind of rib contrast stitch all around these squares. So I'm just going to do this stitch all the way around, and then like I think this will actually look really nice if I do a single crochet border of this color as well. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Alright, so I've got the finished quilt here. Trying to find a spot big enough on the ground to lay it all out. I'm actually really happy about how the colors turned out. I thought they would kind of go together when I was making this, but I think they actually look really cool. So this works out perfectly because I have a holiday gift exchange coming up. So this is the side that I chose to be the front with the single crochet edge, but if you want, this can be the side that you display. Something I actually thought about is making this more like a real quilt, where you would do 2 layers of the granny squares and then put some sort of batting in the middle. So I decided not to do that because I think this is thick enough, and that would have taken so much extra time and yarn since I'm trying to make this a scraps project in time for this video. So I did not do that, but that is something that I thought of that you could try as well. So this is the quilt. On to the next project. So for this next project, I've got a few of my spares. I think I made a couple of extra. I've used these 3 colors of yarn to make a bunch of little got everything stuck together in a pile here to make a pile of these little granny squares. These are the same as the ones for the quilt, only these are only 4 rows, so they are quite a bit smaller. To get this incredibly random effect, which is like the easiest way to do it for me, I actually took my skeins of these 3 colors and just kind of like unraveled some, cut it off, tied them together, and I basically made myself a scrap yarn ball. Obviously that is unnecessary. You can just kind of like pull from your skeins at random, or if you want to do a specific pattern with these, you can kind of figure that out. I just wanted this to be kind of like quick and really get random colors for these, so that was what I chose to do. Now the way to kind of figure out how many of these I needed, I just took each square and kind of held it up to myself. And I have some of this stitched together already. So for me, at this size of square, this is going to be the back of the shirt. I did 9 so that it will fit across my shoulders and be just like a little cropped, not like a super cropped top. I am still going to add the sleeves. I'll show you how to do that. And all I did to attach these was, once I had all my squares, I just laid them out and slip stitched each of these together. So I've got the back finished. Then for the front, I'm going to do kind of like a V-neck. So I left a hole here and I'm going to make 2 skinny rectangle pieces that I'll attach here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So to make these fit, I do want to leave a little bit of a gap for the V. So I'm just going to make a rectangle that is 17 by about 8, I think, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, so once I added those 2 panels, I actually went through and did a row of half double crochets just to close it off a little bit more. You wouldn't need to do that, just I didn't make these wide enough in the first place, so this is what it would look like from the front now, and have like this little bit of a collar that just kind of hangs open like a V-neck. So now I'm going to attach the front and the back, so I'm going to place them right sides in and just attach them at the shoulders, and then figure out how much space I need for the sleeves. And I'm actually going to put 3, well, I guess they would kind of go like this, but put 3 squares together for the sleeves. So I'll attach those and then stitch them up here. Okay, so now that I've got everything attached, the last thing that I'm going to do before I weave and trim all of these ends is just do a row of single crochet around the hem of the sleeves and the bottom, just to kind of even out this kind of scalloping that this does. If you like that, you can totally leave it. I just would like to kind of have a straight edge at the end of those. So I will do all of that and then show you the finished product. So those are my most recent scrap yarn projects. If you make any of these yourself or have any other ideas that you use granny squares for or use scrap yarn for, feel free to tag me on Instagram. I would love to see it. If you like this video and you want to see more from me, feel free to subscribe. I post videos 2 to 3 times a month, and I usually do crochet content at least once a month or every other month. Thanks so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time.